The 2014 budget, why did that go so wrong?
I think Joe Hockey had too much coffee.
We are a nation of lifters, not leaners. Yeah. The age of entitlement is over.
To bring in your first budget in such a sort of strong way has a sense of arrogance.
We know that for some in the community, this budget will not be easy. But this budget is not about self-interest. This budget is about the national interest.
In a word, ouch. The government's calling it pain with purpose, and there's pain aplenty.
Spending has been slashed by cutting family benefits and tightening welfare rules. The deepest cuts are to health and education.
A whole lot of policy got dumped that night. The Cabinet had not been consulted at any stage, which is just unforgivable. There were colleagues who were crying. They were crying because they were saying, how can I explain this to people?
It had some good things in it, like the Medical Research Future Fund, the defence spending, but it also had a lot of controversial measures in it with respect to pensions, bulk billing, unemployment benefits, and ultimately that was too much for the public to embrace at one time.
We must always remember that when one person receives an entitlement from the government, it comes out of the pocket of another Australian.
I think Joe Hockey thought this was really the chance to end what he perceived and others in the Liberal Party as a period of handouts, almost a bit of dole bludgers are dole bludgers by definition, right?
And then there was Joe Hockey and Matthias Cormann with their cigars, they were congratulating themselves on bringing down a budget, which in the public perception was exceptionally harsh. Seriously, did you have to do that where you could be seen?
We cannot go on paying our mortgage on the credit card.
The country, I think, was ready to tackle some reform. It was not as well executed as it could have been. And there was a concern that commitments that had been given by Tony on election night were now being reversed in a very ham-fisted way.
Abbott did an interview with SBS.
No cuts to education, no cuts to health, no change to pensions, no change to the GST, and no cuts to the ABC or SBS.
Look, SBS doesn't have a huge audience, but you know what? Everyone in Australia saw it again and again and again after the budget.
Good morning, Prime Minister.
Koshy, good morning.
Are you a bit embarrassed that you had to break so many election promises?
Koshy, this is a fundamentally honest budget.
Look, everybody that knows me knows that I love Tony Abbott, but yes, I think they were things that under pressure he need not have said.
No cuts to health, there'd be no cuts to education, there'd be no increase in taxes, and all three of them appeared in the budget.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true.
So post the budget, we're in this meeting and we go around, and I felt like we were living in an alternative universe where everyone was saying, it's so fantastic, it's so great, we're going so well, everything's great. And, it got to me and I very politely but honestly and directly said, well, the truth is we're not living up to what we said before the election. And I said what we should kind of do is what we'd in Queensland call do a Peter Beattie.
Now we got it wrong. The community didn't share our solution.
Front up, say, this is what we've got to do. I'm sorry that this is the case, and get about fixing it, which the public really respects, that honesty and directness. And unfortunately, the Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, saw that as a very personal attack, had a very visceral and angry response. He sort of smashed his hands on the table and said, we can't admit that we fucking lied. There's been no fucking lies in this. And I mean, it was just a very strange response to what was sort of a pretty clear and respectful statement of the obvious.
I mean, I think I was silly enough but to stand up and say, well, look, you said there'd be no new taxes, and there is. I don't think he liked that much. I don't think he spoke to me for 6 months.
Taking to the streets, voicing their anger about the federal budget. We'd had a disastrous reception back in our electorates that had shaken a lot of people.
If this is a joke, Tony Abbott and Joe Hockey, we don't do it. It's not funny.
There really was a lot of phone calls happening between backbenchers saying, hey, how's it going where you are?
It's brutal, it's cruel, it's inhuman, it's un-Australian, and I'm furious.
Post-budget rancour spilled on
After the 2014 budget, the opportunity began to emerge for those who didn't necessarily support Tony's leadership to begin to explore other options, and the only other option was Malcolm.